and welcome to CNBC-TV18.com presents Securing Cloud and Apps Using Developer-First Security Approach, powered by AWS and Snyk. Now, there is no denying that developers are at the helm of digital transformation. However, while developing smart and innovative applications on the cloud is exciting, the task does come with its fair share of security vulnerabilities and gaps. Moreover, securing codes or fixing misconfigurations in post-development stages can prevent enterprises from innovating rapidly or deprive them of that competitive edge. Hence, there is an urgent need for security solutions that come with a developer-first approach. Now, these integrate seamlessly with the tools and workflows of developers, helping them in detecting and resolving vulnerabilities automatically such that codes get secured as soon as they are written. So, at today's very special event, with the help of our esteemed panel of experts, let us understand the importance of developer-first security approach and how developers and businesses can maintain the desired delivery speed while building apps safely. Now, the digitization landscape is extremely fast-paced today, and not securing the application development cycle from the very beginning can mean wasting a lot of time and effort on remediating issues after deployment. So, to understand how developer-first security solutions can help in this regard and enable developers to identify and tackle vulnerabilities in code, containers, open source dependencies, and infrastructure as code, let us begin the event with an insightful conversation with Vishal Khare, the Regional Vice President of Snyk India, and Vinaya Satyanarayana, the FSI Principal Solution Architect at AWS. Gentlemen, please join us on the stage. So Vishal and Vinaya, thank you for being here. Let me start with you, Vishal. A lot of new applications are getting launched as we speak all the time, and developers really need to keep on their toes to keep innovating and catering to these changing times. How is your security approach making their lives a little easier, reducing risk and boosting productivity at the same time?
Thanks. I think this is a good question. And let me try to first explain you that what exactly is happening in today's scenario. So with COVID, I think that digitization has become very, very fast, and I think every organization has realized that's the way forward, and you have to deal with your customer through your software platforms and things like that. And hence the developer has become like a center of all the proceedings in that sense. And when the developer already has many responsibilities in terms of building a flawless platform, business logic, user interface, and all that. And now we are saying that the security also moves to the developer. So you are having a couple of problems there, like developer is saying that it's too much of work. There is a developer burnout issue which is happening. And developer is saying that it's kind of extra work, it's kind of a speed bump in the smooth flow, whatever I was doing. And to tackle all this, here comes a company like Snyk, where we are saying that we will make the developer's life very simple or simpler as compared to what it is likely to be. And our approach is such that while you are tackling the security, but the tools, the way they look and feel, they exactly look and feel the way the developers are used to have. So there is nothing developer is feeling like they are having an extra tool or extra work. And the speed at which what we can scan the entire codes and the task what developers are doing is very fast. So developers never feel that there is an extra incremental work what they are doing. So net what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to build platforms and tools which are very developer focused, developer friendly. And while organizations are pushing to shift towards left, more and more to become more agile and more security aligned in that sense, we are trying to make developers' life very simple and to ensure that this entire process remains very agile and the security is not like a bottleneck in between and developers are trying to say that we don't want to do this or something like that. So that's kind of our take on this to start with.
So you're trying to make it really easy, for people to adopt the technology. Easy use of ease is there. So Vinay, let me toss that question to you. How easy, as Vishal just put it, has it been to integrate Sneak's developer-first security solutions with your own services like your Amazon ECR, EKS, your code pipeline? How easy or hard has it been, and how effective has it been working with Sneak?
Thanks. You can hear me, right? Okay. The key stuff which I would look at in all of this is this. As Vishal was saying, we need to make life easier for the developers. And let me say one thing about all developers. All of us want to build the best code possible. We want to be proud of what we have done over the years. Okay? I don't think there is any developer who feels proud to say they had a bug or they had a security incident. Okay? Developers are proud in that sense on what they build. Now the key challenge, like what he mentioned out, is that we need to make their life easier. You put a lot of burden on to them, invariably something or the other would slip. Okay? When there is pressure, let me skip a step. That will be the kind of attitude which comes in when we put them into a lot of pressure. Now, in terms of the way we have done as part of AWS is that we have integrated solutions, which includes Sneak's products as part of our pipeline, predominantly the AWS Inspector, which makes it easy for the developers to use it at various stages. Today, the developers can use it as part of their IDEs, whether they use Visual Studio Code or any other IDE they prefer. They can get feedback in terms of where the issues are, where the vulnerabilities are as they code. So that is first step. They get the feedback, then and there they have the ability to take action on it. The next step is when they check in the code into GitHub or whichever is the source code repository they have. So the pre-commit hooks which can be configured as part of the pipeline of build, deploy, test and deploy can actually prevent issues from moving on to the next stage. Once they build it out into a container image and try pushing it out into a container repository, additional checks can be done to make sure that there are no vulnerabilities which have been introduced, whether it is because of the base image which they have chosen or any of the other dependencies. That helps out into the next stage. Finally, when something is in production, continuous scanning makes it easier to say, hey, there is something which was newly found, which was not there when it was deployed. That can be addressed too. Now, for the developers, the way I simply see it is that we make their life easier. They will develop a much better secure code, and they'll love doing it.
So you make it easy for them to do a better job.
Certainly.
But Vishal, you spoke about fixing vulnerabilities, right? Tell us how you at Sneak are doing that. When it comes to open source, to code, container, infrastructure, can you explain how it works in each of these cases?
Sure. So how we look at the world is that it's bunch of codes and then hardware. Yeah, so everything is code and then you're using hardware to run that code. So when everything is code, whether we talk about containers or open source or anything which is going to come in future as well, so we want to be there in front of every code. And when we want to be there in front of every code, we are talking about that we want to be in front of every developer, and again circling it back that we want to make the life simple for the developers. So our solutions are designed in such a way that today we cover say 4 or 5 or 6 areas. Tomorrow we'll cover probably 8 or 9 or 10. And we want to be a company which is known that we can kind of tackle any kind of code. And while tackling those codes, we are making life as simple as possible for the developer. And we are possibly the only organization today which is focusing so much on developers. And that's where probably that's our USP, and that's where I think the feedback also from the customers are coming that the life of developers is actually becoming simpler by we guys getting into in whatever they're doing. So that's kind of our take on this side. Yeah.
Vinay, has your life been simpler since you started working with Vishal?
Certainly. The way I see it is that for the developer, fixing out issues in their code is the first step. What they really need help on is anything with respect to their dependencies or the dependencies of their dependencies, and the chain goes much longer. Okay? if someone says, look, I've used a particular library or a framework or whatever else is there is part of the dependencies, if a developer gets an early notice to say, hey, there is a vulnerability here, why don't you upgrade to the next version? Makes life a lot more easier. While development itself, they can make sure the appropriate changes are done so that they use a new library. The other case which I find it interesting is that if I get an information early on, and I find that that particular vulnerability has not been fixed in that particular library, whether it is open source or commercial, I can take a decision to say, hey, I will swap that library out or the framework out and choose something else. And choosing an alternate framework or a library early in the cycle is much more easier than trying to do a replacement when everything else is built, I'm ready to ship or I've even shipped it. Now trying to replace some portion of the engine, I know how hard it can be, how much of a nightmare it can provide to the developers, whether it is in terms of upgrading the code, retesting it, making sure everything is proper again. We would preferably do it early in the cycle, make sure things are fine and there are no surprises. And when I really look at it from the long range side, if everything is fine till yesterday night, the only thing which can surprise me is what has happened in the last 24 hours or max 48 hours. I don't want to be surprised to say, hey, there was a vulnerability which was identified maybe a month back, but I was not notified. I continued my development, and then the last minute I have a surprise. We don't want that kind of a stuff. So the developers want to be really assured that the day they are ready to ship, the chances or the probability of a surprise is very, very low.
So while your developers are able to build these secure applications easier, are they also able to do it faster thanks to your partnership with Sneak?
Okay, it's certainly faster from the long range point of view. Okay. The reason I say long range is that you don't want to be held hostage at the last minute to say, hey, I was ready to ship. It is not an issue with my code, maybe an issue with a dependency which I have. Suddenly I'm held hostage because I have to upgrade it at that point. Okay.
And I will also add to that, because see, when you're cautious about securing your apps while you're developing, you are most of the time you're seeing that what can go wrong and you're bothered, so you want to be slow and you want to double check, triple check and then move ahead. When our kind of solution comes in place, so what happens is that we are saying that you just leave the security piece to us, because we'll continue to throw the red lines every day, every week, and we'll continue to throw the possible remediations also. So you can keep on moving as fast as possible, whatever you guys are used to have the speed, and we will take care of the security. So
you're taking care of any potential threats while they continue to build secure applications. All right, Vishal and Vinaya, it's been enlightening speaking to both of you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us. Take care.
It was an insightful conversation. Now, our next session for this evening is a roundtable discussion which will delve into empowering developers to build securely across the cloud-native app stack. Now, as we know by now, security is a major concern from the moment a developer starts to code. And if not detected on time, vulnerabilities can stockpile and create problems which can eat up a lot of time and resources to fix after deployment. Hence, advanced security intelligence that addresses this problem from the very start and resolves issues automatically is the need of the hour. Now, it needs to be easy to integrate and use, as well as scalable and time-saving. So how are enterprises getting on top of it? Let's find out from these very enterprises. So may I now request the speakers to join me on the stage, starting with Sean McLagan, the Vice President of Sneak APJ. Sean, please come up on stage. Vinaya Satyanarayana, the FSI Principal Solution Architect at AWS. Please join us back, Vinaya. Akela V.S. Prabhakar, the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at Zeta Suite. Also Apurva Gaurav, Vice President of Engineering at Yellow.ai. Abhijit Kasnis, Vice President of Technology at Healthify.me. Gentlemen, please join us. So Apurv, I'm going to start with you. Or rather, let me bring Vishal back in first. Okay, Vishal. Sorry. Give me a moment. Apurva, okay, I'll start with you since I said so. As a brand that helps and believes in, helping build businesses, automate customer interactions through a dynamic AI agent instead of the regular chatbots that we're used to dealing with. How unique is your application development life cycle, and how important is app security when it comes to the inception stage itself?
I would like to spend around a minute for what we do. So we are a conversational AI platform. We have a low-code platform for creating very intelligent dynamic AI agents, which can communicate over text-based mediums and voice-based mediums, which can communicate over 30 plus different channels, which supports 100 plus languages. We are a B2B SaaS company, but in a sense, we are a B2C company as well, because we are dealing with our customers' customers. So let's say an enterprise is our client. Their end users are either interacting with our voice agents or text agents. In that case, in such a case, it's of paramount importance for us that each and every interaction the customers have is of high class as well as secure. We can't afford to have any kind of whether it's breaches or whether it's any kind of vulnerability in place. To ensure this, of course, when we started, it was a lot reactive in nature. We used to rely on VAPTs, on network scan, etc. But now what we have started to do is take a more 360-degree approach on this, right from when we start designing a system. So we have kind of shifted left at the design phase, at the design and architecture phase, where each new API, each new system which we are doing, we try to poke holes at what could go wrong in terms of security. Post that comes the development phase, and here we are thankful to Sneak for providing a very good tool which helps developer as they code to identify any kind of vulnerability. Also, since Sneak is updated almost on a regular basis, it gives us comfort that whatever code is going through that is secure to the best of our knowledge, to the best of industry's knowledge, and it also gives us our customers assurance that each single line of code which goes in production is scanned. So that's the second part, and of course, then the third part comes on the when we go to the deployment phase. So we do image scan. We have a Kubernetes-based setup, and where we use a lot of cloud-native technologies to make sure that there is it's foolproof. And the reactive approach, which I talked about in the first, that still continues. So we do periodic testing, both ourselves as well as some of the industry leaders, VAPT providers, so that just in case despite doing all this, if there is a chance that something is insecure, that should get caught. Yeah. So.
Thanks, Apur. Well, Prabhakar, let me bring you back in because you cater to banks and fintechs, very much in vogue right now, and you're working with a cloud-native platform, and that has multiple applications, right from debit and credit card processing to card issuances, loan management, neo-banking for fintechs, and a lot more. While you're building all of these applications from scratch, how easy or difficult has it been to also keep an eye on security at the same time?
Yeah, thank you and good evening. And as you rightly said, we are a technology service provider, and most of our customers are regulated entities, and we cater to banks and financial institutions. So shifting left, going close to the customers and going close to one step ahead, I will go. Not only going close to the developers, even our developer community shall go close to the customers and regulators also. So there's a very important aspect, because your security, the privacy or the compliance, they start right from the requirement stage itself. What exactly you wanted to build and what is that you are trying to protect. You should be very clear on that. So awareness is the key. And being a cloud native SaaS platform provider, we are extra careful on training our resources and deploying the tools and ensuring that developers are having the necessary IDE plugins. Example, like in a traditional software development lifecycle, you used to have peer reviews and their team leader reviews and all those things. Now, most of these things are getting replaced with tools like Sneak, or a lot of other tools are also there. So these tools also having a lot of intelligence to build and to detect the vulnerabilities. So basically the visibility. And similarly now the dependency check, which when I was also telling. So a code on its own can be vulnerable because of the coding mistakes done by the developers or by the open source libraries or the resources, the configurations they have selected. If we go close to the developers, provide with the necessary tools and the automation with the intelligence of these dependencies, in addition to the code they are doing, obviously they will be extra careful, and in the beginning itself, they will mitigate all those things. And on top of it, we are also enabling certain gates, part of our CI pipeline. So we do SE, and technically if you want me to talk, we do SEA, SAST, and DAST, and also code reviews. There are a lot of things we do before we move it to the CD and further to the production. Because we are also a regulated entity, we do testing with our independent testing function, which I handle. And also we deploy a reputed and certain approved, because in India case, we need to go with certain approved vendors and a third party reputed VAPT vendors, so that we also will understand what we are doing is right. So it is an additional check. They will tell us that the process, what we are following, the way we have done the things. So it's like an acid test. If I get a clean report from that third party agency, so that my shifting left is making a lot of sense. So that's what we are practicing, so that we are reducing our what you call vulnerability issues. We are coming down, the productivity losses are coming down, and efficiencies are improving, and the agility, all those benefits we are getting. That's what we are practicing. Thank you.
Right. Abhijit, let me get your thoughts. At Healthify Me, you're using advanced health tech, right, to help users track their weight, their fitness, their water intake, their breathing, everything, you name it, right? How important was it to keep an eye on security so that, in the development phase itself, so that there are no glitches once the app is deployed?
Right. So what Healthify Me is about is wellness, right? A lot of people want to count the calories that they're consuming, want to go on their weight loss journeys, want to get better. If they're pre-diabetic, they want to kind of go back to healthy living. And we enable all of that through our app, right? So users are able to update all of this information in the app, and then the app is able to give guidance to them about how they can proceed on that journey. Now, we do a lot of intelligent algorithmic work in the backend, so the user can get all this guidance and advice automatically through our smart systems. You can then further go and talk to our coaches, which will provide a human layer of advice. And then the next level is where we have devices, and I'll talk about that a little bit, where you can have your smartwatches, glucose sensors, and so on, that can give more detailed information about the health, that the smart system as well as the coaches can help you in your journey of weight loss or being healthy. While we are doing all this, the information that we are collecting is health data, right? So this is all personal health information, starting with your height, weight, glucose information, your allergies, history, any prescriptions that you're sharing with us, so that we can guide you in your nutrition. So all this data is very sensitive. So every developer who is working on our system needs to make sure that this data is not going in the wrong hands. It is only visible to the right people in the system. Right? So starting from access control, starting from the coaches have access only to their clients' data. Security is kind of built into the DNA of the developer. That's kind of why it's important for us.
I mean, across all three of you, data security, of course, is of prime importance. You're handling a lot of sensitive customer data. Sean, let me bring you in. How does a developer-first security solution help companies that are also banking on speed and also variety at the same time when they're building and shipping apps? How important is it for them to have ownership of the application security, especially to ensure customers' data is protected?
Thanks, Ritu. And I think listening to all three gentlemen, they talked about their organization revolved around the application, right? And I think there was a conversation that was probably had inside of that organization at one time was, should we go fast or should we be secure? And I think that view of the world has got to change, right? And I think the way we've moved away from waterfall programming into agile, we're trying to look that shift left movement to go faster. And Sneak's view of the world is if we can empower the large number of developers that we've got in the world. Some organizations tell me they have 10, 100 times more developers in their organization than we have security professionals. So Sneak's view is let's empower those developers, give them tools they like, tools they know, things that they look and feel, and allow them to take a little bit of weight off security professionals. So security can be focused on risk compliance around the front end of the governance piece. And I think that's the key, Ritu, is if we can make that shift, it's not fast or secure. You can actually have a version of the story where you're pushing out new versions daily, weekly, hourly, however fast you need, in a confidence level that's never been there before.
So you have comfort and security so you can build at scale and at speed. Vinay, let me bring you back in. A developer-first security approach, how is it helping organizations keep an eye on applications? Does it ease compliance? Does it help with internal security and regulatory policies as well?
Look, as a major cloud provider, one of the things which we try doing is to ensure that our developer community, the group of people who build on our cloud, are in a position, like Sean said, fast and also secure. Okay. Now, when we allow that, there are already a lot of tools which will help us with VAPT, vulnerability test, to all of that stuff. Now, the key thing is that I build a bad product or I build a non-secure product, I can't protect it with firewalls and the rest of it. It is essential that the development is also done in a fashion that there are no vulnerabilities into the system. Protecting a bad app is possibly not a right strategy going forward. We'll have to build it secure from day one or from day zero, if you want to call it that. Okay. Now, that is a place where we have partnerships with Sneak, and Sneak's products are integrated with AWS products. It helps our developer community to build faster and build secure. That's where I would look at it.
Okay, Apurva, let me bring you back into the conversation. How important was it from an investor point of view to have this kind of security? Because you raised about, what, $78 million last year itself. Did your platform, network, and data security, did that play a very important role when it comes to attracting an investor to put money in the company?
Of course. So, why we raised money and why we were able to raise a very healthy round? If you see, there are a limited number of companies, limited number of SaaS companies, B2B SaaS companies operating out of India who have been able to scale fast. We are one of them, and we are very proud of that, doing that. But one major reason why we have been able to do is we have been very cognizant about, especially data security. So around 3 years from now, 2.5 to 3 years from now, we started going global. Earlier we were only in India, and we were one of the leading players in India. But during COVID, we saw our go-to-market motion increasing rapidly, especially in Southeast Asia. Okay. So the question started arising. These enterprises across the world, they started asking that, are you compliant to our local laws? Are you compliant to the data residency requirement? So we did an architectural change in our systems where instead of having a centralized data repository, we can have multiple data repositories as per the local data residency needs. That itself give a lot of confidence to our customer and hence also to the investors. Other things which we also started doing is focusing a lot on compliance standard, the blue chip compliance standard across the globe, whether it's ISO, whether it's SOC, whether it's and as well as laws like GDPR and HIPAA. So we started focusing on that. We try to plug hole wherever required to do so. That also gave confidence to the investors. And I think investors definitely want that the company which they are putting money is completely secure, because any kind of breach can cause a lot of problems to the company and hence to their investment. So they need to be completely confident on that.
No, absolutely. Abhijit, would you concur? Because you also raised about $75 million last year. How important a factor was this security when you were looking at making a play at investors, and also your developer first security approach that you had? Do you think that earned the trust of these investors, helped you secure the kind of funding that you did?
I think the central piece is user trust, right? So all the things that we are doing is to make sure that the user feels that their data is secure with us. The investor trust is an outcome of that, right? That the record that you have in the industry, the reputation that you've built, so that you're not kind of leaking the data, misusing the data, or the data is not getting pulled by other entities. That is critical, right? So obviously in investor meetings, investor decks, security is front and center. Right? And with COVID again, the threat levels were significantly higher. So our ability to project ourselves as a keeper of sensitive data of all our consumers was critical. And then that certainly helped in the investor conversations.
Well, Prabhakar, what about you? Because, any sort of security breach when it comes to banking can cost a lot, not just money. It can cost trust, it can cause frauds, it can cause regulator to take strict action against you. How do you make sure that security is perfectly in place when these banks and fintechs are starting out from the get-go?
Yeah, one is that by going close to the customers and creating, understanding their requirements, understanding the regulatory and the compliance needs. Example for us, the PCI is one important requirement, and SOC 2 Type 2, and there is something called a PCI 3DS. So there are various compliance requirements. On top of it, the regulatory requirements we have to comply with. That is from the regulatory and compliance perspective. And also the key for the entire, the monitoring and the observability and the visibility, application aware traffic monitoring, the kind of architecture what we have built, which will enable us to detect and also protect and restore very fast. So that is how we have our setup and the operations, and also the way we have architected our applications and the entire architecture on top of it, the applications are running. So by design, by default, we have taken a lot of measures on the security and on the observability. So that will put us in a strong position, so that we will try to give and the best service to the customers.
Okay, so we've heard from some of the unique companies across industries here, but Sean, tell us about the kind of industries that you've been able to service with your developer-first security solutions, and are the needs very different across industries, and how do you cater to them specifically?
Yeah, I think when we looked at expanding the Asia Pacific and Japan region, which I look after, which have for 2 years, we were definitely thinking the cloud natives, right? They were born in the cloud, they get the cloud. It was kind of easy for them to take advantage of these types of technologies. But I've been amazed over the past 2 years, sizes of organization, verticals of organizations. It's a ubiquitous problem. And I think if we think about that developer security balance, globally right now, there's something like 120 million cybersecurity jobs, of which something like 25 million are open. So unable to find resource, even in a highly skilled country like India, and yet there's something more like 50 million, 60 million developers, so that number continues to go up. So that shift is being felt by small retail, that shift is being felt by insurance, banking, finance, obviously the cloud natives. But I've been blown away of the types of customers that we're dealing with, the organizations. Some of them are having more challenge. So moving from that legacy to modern. But I think the digital transformation we've seen in the last 2 years, that company focus around interaction with our customer or our constituent means this is a challenge and a problem that everybody's trying to solve.
Well, that's quite an eye-opener. It's not just, legacy companies that are transitioning to cloud that have these problems, but companies that are born in the cloud, like you say, also facing these kind of challenges. But Vinay, let me bring you back in. What according to you are some of the best ways when you talk about ensuring application security in the cloud? Can a developer-first approach secure these cloud-native apps starting from day zero?
Certainly. Look, end of the day, like what I was telling earlier, developers are a proud community. We want to make sure what we build is good. And when we are part of any leadership team, the one thing which I always believe in is that you don't want to be in the media for the wrong reasons per se. Okay? It is a death point for the organization, the career of the person, and possibly the investors who have invested behind it. We don't want to be in the news for wrong reasons, whether it is a data leak to anything else. So what does it really keep us awake at night is to make sure that we get and keep the trust of the people all the time. Okay, including the regulator, customers, investors, all of the stakeholders, which basically means that we build it secure from day 0 or 1 and keep it secure at all times. So that becomes the key mantra for all of us. Now, that implies that the developer first approach becomes essential. And as I said earlier, developers have to be in control, but let us not overload them. Overburdening them is actually counterproductive. Enable the developers to take care of the things which they love most, which is their own reputation, their need for building good code. Get that, support them. My belief is that developers by nature want to build good stuff which they want to be proud about.
Of course, yes.
Okay? That is a place where it will really help us. Whether it is with any development, they'll be able to make sure their applications are secure, whether it is on the cloud or even on-prem. They will stay motivated towards that.
Sean, how are you helping companies like that get good sleep at night?
I wish I could say I could do that for all companies.
But more specifically, how are you ensuring that their entire cloud computing infra, right from the source, is secure, and you minimize the cost of misconfigurations?
Yeah, I think I'll pick a couple points from Prabhakar and also from our friends at AWS. The looking at building security into day zero, I think that's critical. I think if you're looking at building security later on down the track or at that point of production or commit or raising your company, that takes a lot of challenge, right? I think the shift left motion we've seen over many years, it was kind of originally a shift left was take security protocols and dump them on developers. I'm going to steal Prabhakar's line because you don't follow me all across APJ, but I like their thinking about shifting left even close to the customer, to the regulator, right? So it lines up with Sneak's vision, right? So I think our vision is to be easy to use, easy to access as a cloud SaaS tool, open to everybody as it's based on the size of the development team, and allowed to be built in early. We love doing work with young startups, Series A, Series B, a huge industry in India. We're talking to them tomorrow afternoon as well, actually, about how do you build security day one. And they're really excited about the fact that they can develop their products as exciting as they are, get them to market, but also be sure that if Series B and D and E and IPOs and comes along, they know they were secure from the start.
Is there a lot of potential opportunity for work in India?
I think there's a lot of potential for work in India. I think it's a great place. Love visiting. We're always excited by the innovation coming out of the region.
Well, Vinaya, let me come back to you again on that note. Cloud security, it has a lot to do with getting rid of the vulnerabilities in the open source technologies. How can a developer-first security approach deal with this problem and create business advantage for companies?
Look, when we say developer first, what do we really need? We need the developers to make sure that the code they write is safe and secure. That's the first portion. The second one is to make sure that the frameworks, libraries, whatever they're using it as dependencies are also secure. Now, that is a very, very difficult task for a developer. And we need to make their life easier to figure out that are the dependencies secure, are the dependencies of the dependencies secure, and we can go down the chain. And it is near impossible for developers to keep track of possibly 300 odd dependencies which their code is really dependent on. They need the help of tools like Sneak to really give them that real-time intelligence to say, hey, this is one library 7 layers down in the dependency chain which has a vulnerability and they need to do an upgrade. That intelligence, information at the right time is essential. Otherwise, we can just put the responsibility on the developers, nothing really happens if we don't enable them with tools to really be effective. And that's what I would say. If we do that, a lot of things are much more easier, we are more secure, we can sleep peacefully at night.
You really don't want to make any mistakes there. Abhijit, let me bring it back to you then. What is your take on detecting vulnerabilities in the early stage of app development? What's been your experience and how can it help churn out more smart tech solutions? Your take on this?
It has certainly helped to identify issues in the very beginning, right? Like typical 3-4 years ago, right? In a classic approach is you build the whole app. Once you're ready, then you send it to a vendor saying, hey, can you just do a security check and send it back to me and we'll see what it is. Right? What you get is like a long report, or you run your code through a kind of code scanner. Will give you like 1,000 entries saying, hey, there is like 1,000 problems with your code. You go back to your development team saying, dude, whatever we have done so far is like, is all like, just red. The developer starts looking at it and half the things are false positives, right? They're like, oh, this is not really a problem. Then you go back to the vendor and then he says, oh no, the tool told me that it's a problem. So it's like a mess, right? It almost feels like you are at day 0 when you are at day N of release, right? You're literally going back and having to redo everything. Something like Sneak or anything else helps in solving that upfront, right? When you're writing that line of code, if somebody can stop you and tell you that, stop, there is a vulnerability that you are introducing, I think that's useful. Also in the rush of building fast, we tend to use a lot of off-the-shelf things. And a lot of those are then just copied and brought into the code without full knowledge of the issues, right? Like if you try to just read any of their readmes or anything else, it's like impossible to understand what's going on. Like the layered vulnerabilities, impossible to track where that is. So all of that is very, very useful, right? For us, a different level of problem comes with the smart solutions, right? So we have about 200 million diet plans that we've generated over time. And now we want to give these plans generated automatically, which means you're combining personal data from those many million users and generating a recommendation. So you need to make sure you are anonymizing this data. None of that identifiable information is moving into the smartly generated plans. So you need to collect data securely, keep it separate, and when you're combining it, you make sure that it is anonymized correctly and so on. And all of that doing with somebody like kind of Sneak or another tool that is helping you along is very, very useful.
Bursting the bubble for people like us who thought we're getting our own unique plans from Healthify Me, huh?
They are unique, yes.
Apurva, what was your security strategy when you were during the software development stage as well? A lot of red lines for you?
Yeah, so I highlighted about some of the points regarding shifting left in my previous question. But what also we are doing is trying to make sure that any kind of access is very, very fine-grained, is controlled at a very, very fine-grained level. Our clients can tweak that which person in their organization can see what data, can affect what data. Can similarly, internally also in our development and in DevOps team, we have a very fine-grained access control. We have come up with our own zero-trust solution, which is based out of a product by AWS. So thanks to AWS for that. This ensures that each and every access to our production servers is completely logged, completely auditable. So there can't be any mistake or any sabotage possible. So when it comes to security, we have to attack from all various angles, whether it's from coding, whether it's from designing, whether it's from development, whether it's from access, and we are trying to take a view on all of these so that our customers are confident about us.
All right, Prabhakar, how does your application security strategy help banks? Because every day they're onboarding new customers, they're migrating data of the old customers. How do you ensure that there's no breach of security, no loss of data in the process?
Yeah, there are multiple ways. As I told you, one is that the understanding the requirements, what exactly we are trying to protect, and what are all the channels we have to critically protect. So there are multiple ways, and one is the application level and also the dependencies. What I mean by dependencies, the below layers also. So we have to protect all the layers using automation, using secure code development, security by design and default, even the architecture. And also the testing will give a comfort that what you have done is correct. It's not that it cannot build anything on its own. This testing will give you a comfort. On top of it, Vinay was telling the dependency check right in the beginning, but today I have done a dependency check and I will tell these are all the vulnerable libraries or the functions or the resources or configurations. But tomorrow again, you have to do that. So the change management is very, very critical. The integration, that's where the CI helps a lot, and you have to make it continuous, and it's a process and it's a journey. So you have to keep your lights on always, and observability and monitoring is very, very critical, and every layer, and visibility is very important. So what is the data and application aware traffic monitoring, what kind of data is coming into your network at every level, at transmission level, processing level, storage level, what exactly your application is handling. So this awareness will make the developers to do the coding properly, right, from authentication or authorization or encryption controls or any third-party SDKs when you are bringing in. There is something called a supply chain risk management. So there are a lot of things we have to consider to make it happen, which is what we are training and we are implementing, so that it's like 360-degree view, and also a risk management approach where, so the compliance is a binary, like you can't take a big risk management approach there. You have to comply with the requirement because it's a compliance. But remaining things, there are best practices, certain things beyond compliance you have to do, because your environment is little different. You have to ensure that you have to do certain architectural changes, the way you are coding, the way you are implementing the solution. So it is very, very native to the organization. So that way we ensure that we are doing things what is required for us in such a way that we are protecting and we have visibility, and we are taking the 360-degree view of the environment and the applications, keeping in view of the customers.
All right. On that note, we've run out of time, but thank you for your thoughts. Abhijit, Apurva, Prabhakar, Vinaya, and Sean. I hope you all had a lot of takeaways. I did. How to build, with security at speed without compromising that. Catering specific solution needs, solving for those red lines, or just getting some good night's sleep using, some of these security platforms. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Been a pleasure speaking to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For what was quite an engaging and valuable discussion on the importance of empowering developers to build applications securely and quickly on the cloud and troubleshoot vulnerabilities in the inception stage itself with the right tools at your disposal. Now we're going to move on to an exciting live demo session, Sneak in action with Karthik Dedia, who's the senior sales engineer at Sneak. We also have Pratap Padmanabh, the chief product officer at India Assets, Vinay Kote, also the chief technology officer at India Assets. Gentlemen, please welcome, take your place on the stage.
Two audience, I guess. Should be visible. Yeah, I'll connect that later. Vinay, is the screen visible from there? Thank you. If Are you able to see the screen? I'll connect that later. Okay, yeah, check. So, thanks Pratap and Vinay for coming here, and of course, thanks for being a Sneak customer as well. So, Pratap, I just wanted to, have check with you on what has been your journey so far, wherein you have converted your traditional business of real estate into, entire digitalization, where you have built platform for end users where they can see different properties, block the properties, rent it out, or probably purchase it, sell it through that. So how has that journey been for you?
Good evening, Karthik. So let me take a couple of minutes to just explain our concept, business concept. India Assets is a direct-to-consumer real estate wealth tech platform. Now, what I mean by that is, of course, like Karthik, you initiated the question that this space is largely associated with traditional channels, right? So what we do is, our operating space in the market is secondary real estate, and by that I mean a real estate owned by individuals, right? As a company, we don't believe that the need gap in the market starts with transacting in real estate, which is what most of the market tends to focus on. So we believe it starts from the time you have acquired real estate in the first place. So there is this whole life cycle of owning the property before it is eventually liquidated, right? So our customer base is people who are owning real estate, who are looking at two kinds of solutions, which is first one is wealth preservation, which involves while you're owning real estate, that it takes there are a lot of pain points in managing the property, the hygiene part of it, the health check part of it, the governmental documentation part of it, right? So we acquire customers, get them to onboard their properties on our platform, and we cater to all these services that are required in the ownership lifecycle management process, which invariably culminates in a transaction. Now, when I say transaction, obviously you're an owner who's looking to sell and sell at the right value, and mostly when people sell their properties, they also go for an upgrade or diversify the investment mostly in real estate within the realm of real estate, right? So we made our digital foray this year. We started out in 2014, but so we've kind of built our entire digital platform, which is in the we've managed the beta release just this week. So by the end of this month, we will have a full-scale launch of our consumer apps, and we look going ahead. We look to kind of acquire our customers entirely, in the realm of digital space. So in this platform, where now coming to the whole aspect of how data security and other things are so important. So we're glad that we've associated with Sneak at an early stage during the build phase itself. And look, our platform involves a lot of PII data, which is customer centric data, and their asset profiles, their preferences, their long-term investment goals, the valuations for these properties, what are the kind of properties they are looking to buy in the future.
So there is a lot of customer related data, and of course the code base itself is very expansive, which requires a foolproof security from our point of view, that we do not err when it comes to data security. So how exactly we've been benefited by our association with Sneak will be enumerated by Vinay when going forward in this discussion.
Thank you. So Vinay, just wanted to understand from you as well, like many of these Sneak customers have seen real value by shifting left, where developers start involving security early in the life cycle, and they start finding the vulnerabilities early in the cycle and start fixing those vulnerabilities as well early in the SDLC cycle. And that way, of course, it helps them improve their productivity as well. So just wanted to kind of check with you on, with Sneak coming into your organization, how do you see that happening?
Well, Karthik, great point, right? So like Pratap said, for us, the biggest challenge was where we had to convert the entire realm of real estate industry in India or in the world and take it to the wealth tech perspective. We do not offer a product into the market which is again existing classified site, but it's an entire wealth tech perspective. So with this challenge, it was very important for us, because we know all our users, and there are cash, stocks, other asset classes, but real estate is something which is very close to everyone's heart, and they want to keep it safe, they want to keep it secure, they want to keep it such things. So it put forward great amount of security requirement for us, and right from the start we've been very careful, because as you know, like a recent report released by Forrester, anything that you do during the design of the build phase costs you 1 rupee or 10 rupees. But something which is gone live and something where you've put it into production, to change something, that is going to cost you 100 or 1,000 rupees. And of course, like in terms of productivity, the time is equal to cost, right? So during the design, our entire architecture was so focused that we build a secure, scalable approach, where right from the user data, their behavior, their preferences, because we have a very robust backend engine, which is always working 24/7. We're building great innovative features where you just drop a Google Pin location. We are able to tell the value of that property. What is the trend in that area? What is the current price? And you look at it on our app in a dashboard, like how you look at stocks. So whenever there's a real-time change, we have to keep updating. So a lot of security, where Snick has immensely helped us, is take all this upfront. We do not have to depend on the security audits, like after we've launched and put together over there. So the developers do not have to go back and redo their codes checks, or rewrite some of the libraries or functions which they are doing. And we've been able to save a lot of time, and it's very useful, where we have been able to shorten our software development life cycles from 3-week sprint, a month sprint. We are doing releases almost every day, coming closer to the launch. Crazy, yeah.
Good point. I'll pick up from there, where you mentioned that developers, along with typing there or developing the application and typing their code, pulling in those dependencies, they've also started developing it securely. So they've also proactively taken the security piece of it as well, right? So which Sneak also helps in integrating throughout the SDLC cycle, be it your IDEs, be it your code repositories, or as you mentioned, CI/CD or build solutions. So how is your team is using that currently?
Well,
where exactly you are scanning?
Yeah, exactly. So we use a multiple tech stack, where we are continuously thinking of new features, new products that we want to launch, and we have a very tight, passionate team which works day and night. I'm a developer, and I love coding day and night, and I love being with the team and working with them on creating greatness or creating great value. So the best thing that obviously helps is when it integrated so easily with Visual Studio Code, or a few of us use IntelliJ. And while we are writing the code, right, it could be that you want to go fast, you want to deploy your code, you want to finish and roll out this feature. But you might miss, when you are taking some inputs, it could be a string, you might miss putting in some proper input validations. And Snick immediately comes up and says, hey, you could have some trouble here. You can rewrite this again in a better way, or this is the library which you have used. There is a fix available for this in the next version, why don't you upgrade? And this is exactly how, during development, real time, we have been able to get updates and fix them before pushing them to any other environment. And one beautiful thing that I like is, someone was saying that earlier we had to depend on the security audit teams to find these vulnerabilities and tell us. And something that definitely would have been missed is something that you've already put into production. And if there is a breach or there is a leak in one of the libraries there, and real time, it just catches fire. You don't have time to do anything, or you can't even fire control over there. So Snick giving us these updates real time has been very helpful, not only during development, but things you've put into production, and you do not have to wait for another audit report to come in. It's checking every day your repositories and your containers and clusters, and it's keeps us safe and secure, where we are thinking what can happen. And trust me, no matter how much of security we are putting in, it's crazy amount of importance that we've always got to be cautious. Sorry.
Yeah, true. On that note, let me quickly show audience on how that looks like from IDE perspective. So yeah, so this is what Vinay was referring to. Basically, this is my IntelliJ IDE, where developers usually start developing their application, or it could be any other IDE as well. We can seamlessly integrate with, be it Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, IntelliJ, or any other JetBrains IDEs, depending on what technology you are using. But idea here is I have installed my Sneak plugin, and I just authenticate it with my Sneak platform. Now, whenever developers are developing their application in their IDE, on the fly, they can start scanning for security vulnerabilities within the IDE. They get results also within the IDE itself, along with actionable remediation advices on how they can actually mitigate those vulnerabilities. So on the screen, I'm not sure if it is fully visible, but idea is I have this, what exactly that vulnerability is, when exactly it was introduced in, through which version, and from remediation perspective as well, how one can fix it. So he can just pick that up from here, just start fixing it. Even before he moves it to any code repository, he is securing his application from day one in the IDE itself. Yeah. Vinay, just coming back to you again, one of the key success metrics that we have seen is onboarding of any solution to your development team or to your security team. Many a times it requires, long list of dependencies or installations, integrations. There might be, many, I would say, training required for them, right? But how has been your experience with Sneak? Was it easy to integrate? You see it as seamless? Was it easy to onboard any applications and so on?
Well, Karthik, to be honest, I was seriously very impressed and amused, and I'm not doing any endorsement here, but actually, and when we started with Snick, all we had to do was connect with our GitHub repository, and done. And not just when you are pushing code into your repositories of any environment, just the IDEs that we are using, and there was no hassles at all. And even I did not have to spend time explaining to the rest of the team that, how Snick is going to help us, or, go back to them and tell them that, you've got to be careful about what libraries that you are using. They were carefree. All the developers in my team were integrated in one shot. The license when we got, everyone and all that private cloud and even all the remote repositories were connected. And immediately we started seeing some fixes and testing happening, right? I would say so far we've Sneak has helped us identify about 1,200 vulnerabilities, and it's been absolutely thrilling because we haven't rolled out the full product out in the market yet, and it's just happening this week. The greatest of our minds in our team are at it right now, and seriously impressive. The integration technique and the whole support that I just got with the sales contract took more time than the integration of this thing. Fantastic.
If you guys can also give some insights on how these vulnerabilities that get tracked in real time contribute to increased developer productivity on a real time basis. I think that will be the real measure of how much an early stage startup like ours would have actually benefited from the products.
Yeah, so there's a dedicated security research team who works day in, day out from Sneak's perspective, who, of course, kind of looks after or looks out for those vulnerabilities. There are, of course, few of the public resources that we also kind of refer to. But then idea is there are more than 2,300 vulnerabilities that we have also kind of identified in those open source components and contributed to those development team. And then from finding those vulnerabilities in real time, it might happen that there is some open source component or library that you are using currently, which is safe and does not have any vulnerability. But since let's say 2 weeks down the line or 2 months down the line, there is any vulnerability which comes in, there is a notification that gets sent out to you saying that the component that you were using earlier was safe, but now has this vulnerability. Please consider fixing that. So as I mentioned, there's dedicated security research team who basically works day in, day out in identifying and identifying those vulnerabilities, plus maintaining the Sneak database, which is of course live database where that gets updated with all those feeds. On top of that, there are threat intelligence that we add to our database as well. So we just do not blindly follow what industry is saying. We of course add more to it in terms of whether that vulnerability is exploitable in first place, whether that exploit is publicly available so that anyone can just try that exploit on any server, whether that vulnerability has fix available, whether that vulnerability is trending currently on social media platform like Twitter, for example. We do add all those to our prioritization as part of threat intel as well. So just one of the point which Vinayak mentioned, I wanted to show it on screen as well, wherein you can onboard any application on Sneak just within 4 clicks and get started with the application security journey. So let's say I already have integrated it with multiple code repositories. I consider, let's say, GitHub here. So I click on that. Now I just need to pick which application really I want to perform these scans for. And then that application again could have its own custom code. It could have dependencies that my developers have pulled in. It could have infrastructure as code files or Docker files and so on. So Sneak automatically identifies those components and performs the scan. So I just click on add selected repositories here and that's done. So there is no special configuration whatsoever which is required from Sneak's end or from your end. You will have the reports. And one of the points which Vishal had also mentioned, wherein the speed at which we are able to scan is tremendous, so that developers would not have to wait for hours or days to get the feedback and report. They usually get those in minutes and start fixing or working on those vulnerabilities already, right? And then there are multiple other things that we do differently, wherein just in few clicks I can raise a auto fix pull request on my GitHub, for example, so that developers would not have to kind of rely on how do I fix it. They might not have to Google it out, might not have to look at Stack Overflow, for example. That everything is provided within the IDE as well as the UI, right? Now, coming back to you, Vinay, the Sneak reports have added, security team and development teams. They can prioritize vulnerabilities very easily. They can start fixing those vulnerabilities very easily at early stage itself. So how are you consuming those Sneak reports today?
Well, as you said it, Karthik, I could be sleeping or, I'm just doing something, I get a notification that, hey, we found a new vulnerability in one of the code pushes that one of your teammates made. And I don't have to call them back. I don't have to talk to anyone else. I open my GitHub. Snyk has automatically raised a pull request itself with a fix that, just merge it. And it's done, it's fixed. And it's not just the dev environment or again, the staging environment. It's the production environment, which is very impressive for me, right? It could have passed all the tests. It is in the prod environment or some of your products which are already there. Then it is currently, immediately identifying something, telling me that you've got to take care of this, because though it was passed earlier, you will have to fix this because Snyk has scanned, a vulnerable threat somewhere and telling me to be safer. And the reports that I get, again, with the weekly reports, the dashboard that I look into, of course, I'm sure all of us would agree, whenever we are developing, warnings are not something that, we love taking care of, because, of course, warnings is just warning. Your code is going to run, right? But with security, you can't do that, right? No matter if it's a critical, if it's a high importance bug or low or anything, you've always got to be safe. And, since we are dealing with preferences and recommendation purpose, we are collecting a lot of user data, the profile, the risk profile, how they behave with the entire real estate industry. And since the engine is, continuously scanning the market, updating itself, we've always got to be there. And the seamless reports always help us to be on top of things that we are doing.
Thank you. So just again, connecting it back on what Vinay mentioned. So this is one of the pull requests which Snyk has raised, which automatically takes care of what all file needs to be changed. It already adds comments saying that what is the severity of vulnerabilities I am planning to fix, what is the priority score of Snyk from that perspective, what are the issues that I am planning to fix, and very importantly, if you see whether that particular change would break the application or if it is non-breaking change. So those are the intels that we are already adding to on top of those vulnerabilities. And then there's one more thing which I can show you here is whenever someone raises any pull request to merge their piece of work into the main branch, Snyk again can perform the test on those PR and tell you if those pull requests or delta, if that is going to add to any new vulnerability, or it informs your reviewer and gives them the capabilities to make informed decision if they can now really merge the piece of work into the main branch, because it does not have any new security vulnerabilities, right? From reporting perspective as well, there is whole new reporting that we have come up with. You can have reports from details perspective or just a summary report, where if I scroll down here, you'll see overview of how many total issues are open, how many of them were resolved last week, for example, or how many of them are new, and so on. When I scroll down, you will see exposure window as well, how many of them are open since less than 15 days, or if they are open for more than 30 days now, or if they are open for more than 60 days, and so on. And then it also gives you the risk breakdown. What are my major, my main applications which are more vulnerable, or the risk breakdown of my entire applications. And on top of that, again, I can filter it based on specific products that I want to look at. Let's say, for example, in this sprint, I want to cater to specific open source components only, or open source vulnerability only. I can just put a filter and see those. There are multiple other filters as well. I can start fixing those vulnerabilities based on priority score, or based on my environment, based on the owner. I can filter it based on CV IDs or CW IDs, the severity of those vulnerabilities. And one of the important thing is you can bookmark this link and see that view whenever you want, whenever you require. Or you can of course send it to your teammates saying that I want you to see this view, and then you just share the link. So that is what the feedback that we have gotten from other customers as well, that they are really seeing the values in the reporting, and it has really made their life easy in prioritizing and fixing those vulnerabilities. Yeah. So mainly this is what I wanted to cover as part of the demo here. Thank you everyone for listening to me patiently.
Thank you for that session, but we're not letting you go just yet. We've given you an insight into how Sneak works in reality and how it is disrupting the cloud and app security landscape with the developer-first approach. But we'd like to open the floor for questions from the audience. So if you have anything you'd like to ask of these gentlemen, please feel free. Raise your hand and you can ask your question and they'll try to answer that. Yeah, go for it.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, so this is Kuldeep Tomar from Games 24x7. So you talked about, shifting security on the left-hand side. So what are the security aspects which are not being covered? So are we talking about full security that's covering SAST, RASP, DST, SCA? So are we talking about all the aspects? So that's my first question. Second question is that does developer need not to be having go through secure coding practice if your platform is so sophisticated?
So
These
thank
are
you.
two questions.
Thank you for the question, Kuldeep. So just to answer your first question, as you know, Sneak is developers first security company. So we are shifting security towards left and helping enable developers in taking few of the security responsibilities so that they can start coding securely and start pulling in those components which are required and see if they can use that confidently. They can see it within the IDE if those components are safe to be used or if it requires some upgrade so that they can mitigate the risk and vulnerabilities. Since as Vishal also mentioned, everything that you write as part of application is code, and that is what we are trying to cover, wherein we are securing the code and all the components used in the code. So yes, you are right. We are more focused towards static analysis or SAST part of it or SCA part of it. Of course, we do not stop there. We do have solutions which can cater to IAC as infrastructure as code piece of it, and of course the containers piece of it as well. But we are still more focused towards dev side of it, where we do not have capabilities to perform DAS, for example, or runtime security or RASP or WEF kind of solutions which you just mentioned, right? And can you just repeat the second question again?
Any average
Yeah.
programmer?
So on the second question on how developers can utilize it, or if they really need the secure, they do not need secure the checklist, for example. I would not say it works like that. I would say since you can start utilizing Sneak as a platform or solution from day one itself. Let's say for me as a developer, when I am writing my code on day one, I realize that Sneak has given me a vulnerability because I am using some wrong patterns, right? So I learned from that mistake, right? And from day two onwards, for example, I might not make the same mistake again. But eventually, once the application is being built already, I can again rescan it to see if there are any vulnerabilities which are there in the code that I have written. On top of that, what Sneak is also building on, which is already available, but which is Sneak Learn, which is more about educating developers on how they can write those source codes securely. And we do it in a different fashion, wherein many a times I've kind of realized that when we speak to development team, because of course they have a lot of pressure to go live, many a times developers, even if they accept that it's a risk, they might not want to fix it. But with Sneak Learn coming into picture, how they are going to utilize that platform is that they can learn about what exactly that security vulnerability is, and on top of that they get to exploit that vulnerability as well, so that they learn about the actual risk and impact of having that vulnerability. And as part of that lesson, they can also learn about how they can mitigate those vulnerabilities, or what are the best coding practices to use to mitigate those risks.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, someone over there. 2 people.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Nihal. We are from Pay Local Technologies. So the question is, yeah, we loved the demo, by the way, for Sneak. It was really informative. So obviously there are competitors in the market, right? Like you have SonarQube and Checkmarks and stuff. So as a organization, right, how do you make the right choice when it comes to Sneak or Checkmarks or SonarQube? Because even these players also provide similar solutions, right? So I want to know how is Sneak's separate from these guys? What, makes you stand apart from these guys is my question, basically.
So there are multiple things that we do differently, right? One of which is the platform as a whole itself, wherein we just do not focus on code, but all the aspects of application, be it your custom code, be it your dependencies, be it your IAC files, which is used for deploying those containers itself. We have capabilities to perform these scans at Docker file level, and then suggest what are the best base images to choose from, so that you can choose those base images early in the cycle and then start pulling in different dependencies which are required for your application. So that way you can reduce the number of risk and vulnerability drastically. Now coming back to how we are different from Sonar or Checkmarks perspective, for example, Sonar of course is a really good solution, but they are more focused towards code quality part of it. And even in Gartner's Magic Quadrant, you would not see them, because Gartner does not consider them as one of the security solution. So they are more focused towards code quality part of it, and does little bit of code security as well, right? And comparing it with some other solution, for example, there are multiple ways in which we work differently. One of the major one I would say is the seamless integration throughout the SDLC itself, wherein you have multiple integration touch points throughout the SDLC cycle, wherein you or your team can decide when exactly or where exactly you would want to get the feedback and start fixing those vulnerabilities. Second would be the speed at which we are able to scan is tremendous, right? So that your developers would not have to wait for hours or days to get the results. And third would be on top of the SaaS results, for example, we apply our own AI and ML to give you more accurate results. So I would say those are main differentiators.
I think there was a question from the lady there.
Yeah, first of all, I thank CNBC-TV18, AWS and Sync for organizing this event and inviting us for this. I'm Uma from BL, Bangalore. I have got 3 questions, small ones. First of all, one of the speakers told that it is integrated with it is integrated. We can integrate it with the Microsoft IDE, and and also code scan the libraries, know the dependencies and vulnerabilities within the libraries. So do we require have to have the source code, or is it the executable or the library runtime libraries, or how is that? That is.
So with Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, when you speak about it, is just one plugin from Sneak that needs to be installed. And how it works is when your developer is developing their application in their local workspace, depending on what all things you want to scan, it will perform code scan, for example. It can perform scans on those libraries, not just on those libraries, but many other times those libraries could have transitive dependencies or nested dependencies as well. So we have capabilities to perform these scans of those transitive dependencies as well in the IDE again, and then give you the results if those libraries has any security vulnerability. many other times those libraries could have licensing risk as well, like copyleft, copyright, patent. There might be some royalty fees that you might have to pay if you're using it more from commercial perspective and so on. So Sneak covers you from both those perspectives, be it security risk or be it licensing risk. You can get those results within the ID itself, and on top of that, along with that, the actionable remediation advice on how you can mitigate those risks as well.
Okay, thank you. The second is that like this sync, does it require internet facility to run or to execute this, integrate with IDE or something like that, or can it be installed and run in the desktop machines? Because you said you have a runtime library getting updated with all the vulnerabilities and the new this one which you get it, right?
Yeah, so very specifically from open source analysis or software composition analysis perspective, because of the sheer size of the database or vulnerability database itself, right, which of course keeps on getting updated almost on daily basis, which is live. So if there are any new vulnerabilities which are coming in today, that gets just updated, and then we enable our customers to scan for those vulnerabilities as well. So very specifically from open source component perspective or SCA perspective, yes, it requires internet connection. But of course, we do not send your code on internet for SCA. We just send some, manifest files or configuration files which are required for us to understand the metadata of the libraries that you are using, so that we can scan those against our database and give you the results in terms of vulnerabilities.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And may I know what are the different IDs which you support?
So we support all the common IDs, be it Eclipse or Visual Studio, VS Code, IntelliJ, or if at all you are using any other JetBrains products, be it PHP Storm, for example, or PyCharm, and so on. So I think so most of the IDs are covered, but let's say, for example, if we are not having direct integration with some of the IDs, we have our own Sneak CLI which can be used and leveraged to perform those scans.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Can we take one last question? Okay, just one last question, please.
This is not related to Sneak per se, but since you guys are giving recommendations on newer versions where vulnerabilities are resolved, etc., do you guys see any trend in the world that is open source becoming more secure? You have some numbers to share. That's point number one. Point number two, a lot has been said about open source today. Do you guys give your software for free to the open source community that the world can become a better place, or do you charge them as well?
You want to take that?
Let me take that question. So as far as your first part is concerned, I think we have a lot of time after this, so let's have a conversation on that, about the trends and what we are seeing and how the situation is changing for good or for worse. As far as second piece is concerned, I think, we do have a lot of pieces where we want to make the world a better place. But we are a commercial organization, so we do focus on our revenue piece. But like what he mentioned about Sneak, Learn and those kind of aspects, where there is a lot of information available about how can you code better, how can you remain secure. And while we still want you to use our software, but at the same time, we are setting the baseline information in such a way that you become better and better. And that gets elevated so that we can build better solutions on top of that. So that's what I can say in simple words, but we can have this conversation because we all will be available.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Vishal, thank you. And Karthik, Vinay, Pratap, all of you, thank you for your time and for patiently answering all of these questions posed by the audience. Thank you. Big round of applause for them. Okay, on that note, the evening has come to an end. Like all good things do, we'd like to thank all of the industry leaders that are here and the experts who've shared their valuable insights, and everybody else who's here for joining us and being with us here today. We now request everyone to please proceed for your drinks and dinner, and please do take your questions offline if you'd like to. Thank you, everyone.